got a lot of stuff up here today. Oh, this feels familiar. According to a great woman named Elizabeth Lesser, who's the co-founder of the Omega Institute and author of the beautiful book Broken Open, to be human is to be lost in the woods. Yeah, I kind of get that. None of us arrives here on this planet with clear directions on how to get from point A to point B. We stumble through this forest called life, dealing with confusion and loss, sometimes even catastrophe, and not surprisingly, we make a few mistakes along the way. Yes, that forest is dark and dangerous. And for this very reason, it's in these woods that we just might discover character and strength we never even knew we had. We all know people who say their cancer or their divorce or their bankruptcy was the greatest gift of a lifetime. That until the body, the heart, or the bank was broken, they didn't really know who they were or what they truly felt or what they really wanted, what really mattered to them. They say that their descent into this darkness was something that caused them to no longer take for granted things like the kindness of their friends and family. And they vowed to stop spending so much time feeling sorry for themselves or for resentments or holding grudges. In those dark nights, we are brought to our knees in humility by life. And it's in those moments that the possibility exists for that hard protective shell around our hearts to crack open. And later, as the pieces fall back together again, folks report that they discovered within themselves a renewed sense of purpose, an inner softness, and a far greater appreciation for every single day of life. But then we also know people who did not turn their misfortune into insight or their grief into appreciation. It's possible, you know, to remain bitter and reactive and fearful and cynical. These folks shut down. They went back to sleep. And this is so sad because when we're asleep, when we do not learn from the things that happen to us in our life, when we simply cannot open to new ideas or new ways of seeing things or new ways of being, the only thing we can do is create one replay after another. Life is, well, Groundhog Day. Adventure, risk, creative thought, joy become highly unlikely. I'm fascinated and humbled by what it takes to stay awake in difficult times. All the different ways we people have of handling times of transition, how we sometimes resist and how we surrender, and how we sometimes get stuck and at other times break open and learn and grow. Since my first major broken open experience, which I think I was about 22 or 3 years old, the loss of my second baby, I have been an observer and a confidant of others as they engage with the forces of their own suffering. I have seen how fiasco and failure visit each one of us as though they were written into the job description of being human. I've seen people crumble in times of trouble and lose their spirit and never fully recover. And I've seen others put that shell around themselves and protect themselves fiercely from any kind of change until they are living a half life, a sort of safe yet stunted existence. But I've also seen another way to deal with fearful change and painful loss. Like the mythical phoenix bird who remains awake through the fires of change, who rises from the ashes of death and is reborn into his most vibrant and enlightened self. Some people, some great lovers of life seem super resilient. Over and over again, they stumble and get up. They get hurt and they recover. They meet a great loss and come back to life. Well, I don't know about you, but I've been both of those people. At times, gone back to sleep in order to numb out the pain or resist the forces of change. And at other times, able to stay awake and be broken open. And I'll tell you no lies. Both are difficult. But one way brings with it the gift of a lifetime. If we can stay awake when our lives are changing, great secrets will be revealed to us. For me, Easter is the story of a phoenix bird named Jesus. He's going along, doing really good work, experiencing moments of true satisfaction, and, at least among the common folks, meeting with some great successes. So great, in fact, that the powers that be, who have lesser spirits than his, are jealous and fearful. Because they feel threatened, they connive to cause him a lot of trouble, to put him in his place, you might say. And when I remember this, I hear in the recesses of my mind echoes of my mother saying to this smart, sassy, challenging daughter, "Who do you think you are?" It's not surprising, because Jesus' experience with the authorities was archetypal. That is, it foretold the human experience in general. When heels are dug deep in the soil of the past, the only thing that seems real is what has been done before. And the only things that seem important are position and power and safety. Threaten those sacred cows and look out. Long story short, Jesus loses everything of material value. His reputation, his work, his loved ones, his very life. Grieving friends bury Jesus and walk away from that tomb in tears. But I've often wondered, what went on in that tomb? I like to imagine that there, in the damp quiet, Jesus faces another archetypal crossroad. Remember, Jesus was not only divine, Jesus was also human. A divine human like you and me. So let's imagine this divine human in that tomb. He would have a lot to process. Let's listen in to his mind for a moment. What was the point of all that work? 1 minute they seem to get it, and then they throw it all out the window. First they say they love me and lay palms in my path, and within a few days turn on me and call for my execution. The apostles, yes, they do love me, and I love them, but they are so weak and afraid. They endlessly waver in their commitment to the work. I'm not sure what they're going to do without me. It's all really confusing and painful and sad out there. Maybe I'll just stay put. After all, the peace in this place is pretty nice. But, on the other hand, if I come back to life, they'll know the truth of what I've taught them. They'll know that the power of God is real and present. The apostles may gain some courage and the work may very well go forward. If I rise from this tomb, it will make such a statement that they may finally understand what I meant by eternal life. They'll get it, that I'm still with them, and that I'll always be guiding and supporting them, even though they won't be able to see me physically. Well, we all know the decision that Jesus made in that tomb. Like the phoenix bird, he decides to let go of his confusion and pain and disappointment and come to life again. In the story, his form is changed. He is now translucent, more spirit than flesh. And I wonder, maybe that is actually the transformation that happens for us too, every time we make the decision to wake up and rise again. Interesting, this experience of the last 3 months. I've been in a tomb of sorts, having been killed off by a campaign and election result that caused me to descend into the deepest doubt about my perception of how things are and who people are. And gut-wrenching worry about the apparent loss of values I hold dear and what this might mean for the future of us all. My personal journey. Then there was the time of grieving with dear friends at Unity in Greensboro and witnessing firsthand the collapse of the church that we had built together and so deeply loved. And beyond this, the experience of standing at the abyss with my sisters, one dying, the other her grieving, devoted caregiver. Patty and I said goodbye to Nancy 3 times in 2 weeks. We had witnessed up close and personal the horror of her suffering and held hands through our own. My guidance during that whole time was to stay with it and feel it, all of it. The grief, the doubt, anger, powerlessness, resentment, despair, and confusion. And that was the only guidance that was coming through. Just stay. And this alone took all the courage I had, for, like you, I have a pretty big toolkit of ways to shut down and go back to sleep. But stay I did, and then miracles began to happen. New hope and energy slowly rose in me as I saw something fantastic. People everywhere waking up and taking action and speaking their truth. I saw what seemed like the rebirth of democracy. I saw democracy at work, and it inspired me. Regardless of outcomes, which of course we know are all temporary. You got that, right? This democracy in action is the real blessing. It will sustain this country and move it forward if we do not go back to sleep. And last Sunday, I visited Unity in Greensboro and joined in welcoming their beautiful new minister, Reverend Stan McNeese. A good and sincere man, young and full of ideas, and something in my heart just let go. This new feeling of freedom came over me, freedom from a burden much heavier than I knew I was carrying. And all that remained was to accept and savor the love and gratitude offered by person after person in a moment when they were deciding to step back into life. And then there was that precious experience of sheer bliss with that moment when Nancy and I got to be alone. And she, supposedly delusional, allowed me to travel with her on a sacred journey into surrender and acceptance. She called me out to be her companion and guide. And together, we entered into a place of power greater than either of us has ever known. We were surrounded by light and filled with the absolute certainty of the presence of God. Nancy could easily have decided to leave the earth plane in that moment. We were both at peace with that. But no, instead of waning, her energy began to come back. And within the hour, she informed me of two things. One, that Spirit had told her that the decision was hers, and she, despite the suffering it entailed, had decided to stay. And two, that she was hungry. Right then, I witnessed the enormity of the power of decision. And I knew that we all, no matter what has happened, no matter what is going on, can make the decision to wake up and rise again. I don't know what's next for Nancy, but I am no longer worried, having felt the absolute power of God's presence, having felt Nancy's power and experienced my own. I am at peace. The tomb is a scary place. It's pitch black and the very air is uncertainty. But it is a very, very powerful place. A naked and intimate place where illusions are stripped away and we meet ourselves with absolute authenticity. Where we make life-changing, gut-level, self-altering decisions. To unconditionally accept and love ourselves or not. To hold on to the stories we're telling ourselves about the past and about the events of our lives, along with all the suffering that accompanies those stories, or let them go at last. To close and shrivel, or open and expand. To let our experience cause us to live in doubt or fear, or renew our trust and hope and love, and let these be our guiding truth. All of which amount to the decision to stay in the tomb or follow that phoenix bird Jesus up and out into the sunlight. The decision is as big as decisions get. For we have all been around the block. We know that life out here is not perfect. We know that there is likely more pain and loss ahead. But we also know that we have the capacity to create joy for ourselves and others. We know that our presence makes a difference, at least for one person. And having been in the bowels of darkness and risen again, we now embody viscerally that greatest of all secrets, that we are not alone.